You are listening to the Home Service Business Success Show. We have been accelerating the path of success for home service companies since 2011.
Do not put all of your eggs in one basket. Because when you live by the sword, you die by the sword.
We're in one of the greatest industries on the planet. So now you've got to get that miner hat back on and start digging for those leads that may be present.
I feel like there was a song about that, wasn't there? Like, what's really going on? What's really happening?
Hey, my friends, Kenny Chapman here along with Chris Crew. Welcome back to Home Service Business Success. We're accelerating the path of home service since 2011. Just super pumped today. We're talking episode 2. No leads, no problem. Some of our listeners and watchers of this, Chris, depending on where they're getting us, they might find a bit of a problem with no leads. So let's break it down for them. Let's have a chat. Let's have some fun, and let's drive some business forward, man.
I feel like if we were on Family Feud right now, Steve Harvey would be looking to the board right now, and he said, is one of the answers to no leads, no problem? And I guarantee you, listeners would be like, that's going to come up with a big on the X, right? Not gonna happen, Chris. I don't understand that. Kenny, you clearly have lost your mind. No leads, no problem. No, really. If you have no leads, you do have a problem.
Absolutely.
Leads are truly the fuel to the fast car. You can build the biggest, baddest, fastest business in the world, but if you got no leads, you got no gas. And so today, let's unwind it so no leads become a problem. Let's make it today at the end of this that you at least have clear direction. Doesn't mean you're going to leave and the phone's going to start ringing immediately. Well, it could, based on some things that we're going to discuss today. Well, Kenny, when we think about marketing first, let's rewind for a minute. Marketing would be the act of getting someone to call my business, right? I'm trying to solicit my services. And that's a really deep conversation that we could get into. But I want to fast forward past that just for a moment and give out a few nuggets right now. We see it often that businesses, and by the way, there's two things that are going on in your business. Number one is what you think is going on. In other words, what you would say, like, this is how we do it. Number two, what's really going on?
What's really happening?
I feel like there was a song about that, wasn't there? Like, what's really going on? What's really happening? And so when we look at what's really happening, I want to fast forward and let's jump into your call center, whether internal or outsourced. And I've seen in many cases, Kenny, when we're working with businesses and coaching them, and hell, even in my own business, I could tell that story. And oh my gosh! In fact, Kenny, I think it would be valuable for the listeners to hear this.
Yeah, let's hear
it. So somewhere around about 2014, it's been a little bit, but I share this story because it's so impactful. We had a program in our business where all of our calls that were not booked were listened to, and they would do what's called disposition them and listen to them and tell you why did they not get booked. It's not following the process, or here's the feedback, here's the general feedback.
Yeah.
Or more importantly, they would listen to the ones that were not booked and also identify, was this truly a lead? And as I was sitting and looking and running reports on calls ran versus phone calls into the business and our booking percentage on the phones, the numbers weren't adding up. They just weren't adding up. And at that time, I'll be off a few points on the numbers, not that makes the relevant point. The relevant point is not around the specific of the number, but we were booking in our call center between 85 and 87%. I thought, hey, we're doing pretty dang good here, right? Especially if that's the industry average is, 80%. We're above average. And we'd have days where we were higher and days where we were lower, but on average between 85 and 87. And as I started looking, it come to my attention that one of our telephone numbers was not being dispositioned. Now, that number that was not being dispositioned was what I refer to as a vanity number. It was the number that was on the trucks. It was the number that was on this and on this. And it was just, It was spread everywhere. It was the TV. It was the radio. I was like, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would we not do that? And as I started looking and I plugged it in, it makes me sick at my stomach to think about it right now.
Even
just
today.
because it was that moment where I went, oh, it hit the fan. And here's what happened. Because the volume that was coming through on that number, vanity number, it was shared on a lot of things. And we're going to talk about that as well. By the time I added the disposition back in with the bulk, and I don't remember the amount of call volume that went up to my booking, my true booking, I said, hey, I hate to ask y'all, can y'all go back and give me a month's worth of disposition on this number? Go back and port it in, pull it in. Kenny, I went to a 61% booking rate on the phone and I panicked.
Oh, man. That's a big drop. That's a real big drop.
24 to 26% difference in booking rate. And it sent me into a panic. And me and my partner were like, we got to fix this. And we thought the answer was, well, you know what? We know somebody who owns a call center that had been trying to bring us on. And they were doing amazing things with other clients. And we're like, if they can fix it quickly, let's just get on a plane and go look. So me and my partner got on a plane. We flew to Phoenix. And we went into this massive call center. And there's agents everywhere. I was so impressed by the way this thing looked. But as I started sitting with agents that were taking calls, I was like, I understand this now. This isn't call taking. This is inside sales. And I know sales.
Yep.
So we're going to stop looking at it like we're call taking. So long story short, Kenny, we came back. We put things in place so that our booking percentage would increase. I didn't need to hire the company. And this is the point that I wanted to make. Overnight, Kenny, we went from we got enough calls to, oh my gosh, we've got too many calls to run now. We don't have enough people because there were so many calls that were coming in that were being dismissed, not as leads. And so this is super important for your business. When we talk about no leads, no problems, you may be thinking, I don't have leads. And I'm saying today, there's two things going on. And number two might be what you need to go look at and see what's really happening. What is my team really doing?
And I think, that goes back to the desire to have the true information. And so the one of the easiest things to do is to look at a marketing report and go, well, hey, we don't have enough. And we know that sales and marketing are always going to be at war, regardless of the business, whether it's in the trades or not. Sales is going to say the leads suck. Marketing's going to say you've got the leads and so on and so forth. So when you get down to what you're talking about, the actual, there's your truth, my truth, and the truth, right? And so when you dig in to find out what's really going on, like, when I launched Blue Collar, originally I did it simply doing ride-alongs with technicians because service managers and owners could have easily done what they paid me to come in to do. They were unconsciously afraid to see what I saw. And so then as a third party, I go in and go, well, hang on, wait, because now Joey leaves the call and goes, that was a bad lead, or you wasted my time. Well, when I'm there and I can help and I can coach and I can train, now, even if he doesn't close that call, he knows like, oh, there is opportunity there. So the point we really want you to get today is that leads is, we'll say lead could be a 4-letter word, right? But it encompasses so much of the business, but we granularly talk about it as though it's a ring in point, it's an internet booking lead. Like we throw it around, and we want you to realize that to what Chris said earlier, it's truly the lifeblood of the business. It's my heart is beating right now, it's being beaten. So like, I'm not doing it. It's just happening. And if it stops happening, then this is going to be a short podcast because I'm going to tap out because it's not going to continue to run this body. And
Don't
if
do that on me, by the way.
Okay, we're not doing that today.
Plan for that. Okay.
That's fair. We're not doing that. But if I just say heart, we think, well, hell, in today's world, we probably picture the little text emoji of the heart. Like so again, with the word lead, there's so much more there because it encompasses so much. And yet we get granularly focused on, oh, I need, I'm running an offer or I'm doing this. And there's so many places to go and so much truth to go dig. And the challenge is, when things are good, we put away the digging tools. I don't have my miner's hat on. I don't have my pick and my axe in my hand when things are pretty good and pretty easy. And, you said it in the last episode that, we've had it pretty darn good for a long time in the industry. And now, if you're feeling a little challenged by leads, our friends, you're not alone. There are some lead challenges that have taken place. A lot has shifted in the industry. A lot of equipment was replaced. There was a lot of free money on the street. All of those things. But guess what? We're in one of the greatest industries on the planet because our clients need us. We're essential, all those things. So now you've got to get that miner hat back on and start digging for those leads that may be present, but you didn't realize it. Like you're in that mine and it's full of rock, but you're chipping and going, oh, wait a minute, there's a ruby in there. I did a mine tour out here in Arizona of a ruby mine. Like, I didn't know it was there. The guy looking for it knew. You got to know where to go look.
Yeah, good point. And I want to drop a value bomb right here in the middle of this operationally, and just say that, one of the things that you can do to find out what's really going on is I encourage you, either you or someone in your business, someone whose compensation is not tied to whether the booking percentage is high or not. Does that make sense? So,
Right.
Kenny, one of those where, well, my call center, and this is a real story. The call center manager's compensation was based on the booking rate of the call center.
Sure.
So they may not necessarily want to face the truth because it impacts my income. And as I was looking through doing what I'm going to recommend, I found in a matter of 3 to 4 short minutes, I found that the call center was not booking leads that were coming in because they were either not in their area or not the type of work, but it was not the case at all. They did do that type of work and it was in their market. And so whether it's consciously or unconsciously, it goes back to your call center. You've got to make sure that you train your call center to ensure, and whether it's one person or it's 100 people, you've got to continue to reinforce. A lot of times, Kenny, I see this. People try to list all the services they do perform in their industry, and it makes for a call taker to be so difficult to read that list and be like, yep, that's on the list. We do that kind of work. Make it a hard, fast rule just to only list the things you don't do. We don't do this. We don't do this. Instead of putting a list of all of the areas where you do service, if you service a big area, list the outlying areas that you know that your
Yes.
marketing reaches, but you don't go there. And then the better question is, if you don't go there, is your marketing overlapped in the area to not be as effective as it could be? And I understand that media and certain things are going to stretch and reach beyond your marketplace. But when we start talking about no leads, no problems, I'm going to start with this when you're ready. Make sure you get operationally excellent first in your call center. Here's the deal. Per agent, per week, 3 booked calls, listen to them. See if they followed your process on the phone of, we teach the 9 steps to a world-class phone experience at the Blue Collar Success Group. See if they're following those 9 steps and saying the things that need to be said. Number 1, the reason why, Kenny, I believe there's a certain amount of homeowners, consumers out there, because you answered the phone, you had availability, and you'll roll a truck out, they'll book no matter what you do. It's just a fact.
Right.
We see it all the time. We listen to calls that have been booked that were not booked well.
Yeah, right.
And
you couldn't stop them from booking the call sometimes, right?
Exactly. So 3 booked calls, 3 non-booked opportunities, so that you can find out where are the areas to coach, what are we doing wrong, and then the other one, and this will find it, 3 non-opportunities, because you may find those non-opportunities to be hidden as gold in the business. And I'm saying this to you today, you got to go get operationally excellent in your call center, and this is one of the first steps to doing that. Now let's shift gears for a minute. One of the things that we often see is, when it comes to no leads, no problem, marketing budgets don't become effective because they're trying to be too spread out. In other words, step number 1 might be to assess your market that you're servicing and marketing to. Your lead gen is in direct proportion to the dollars that you spend, as long as you spend them wisely. But if I take $100 example and I try to market an area this big versus I take $100 and I do this, well, we know that marketing is really about reach and frequency. How many people am I reaching, and how many times have they heard my message?
Yes.
And if my $100 only gets the message out once, that's like doing direct mail once and going, it doesn't work. Well, let me share with you, my friend, direct mail is not dead.
No, it
I will
still
tell you that
works.
it is
That's
not
right.
dead.
Absolutely.
Number two, when you look at lead strategy, different size businesses are going to need to use a different strategy. What I mean by that is a smaller to mid-sized business is really going to need to focus more on call to actions to make the phone ring. Call to action to make the phone ring, and that can be either through digital, through direct mail. There's other ways to do that, and we're not going to get into the weeds on that. Next episode, we'll start talking about tactical stuff. We'll give you some of those today, but I really want to peel the onion back on this one for a minute. A lot of money cannot be spent in your marketing budget as a smaller business toward branding alone. Let me say this.
Right.
Branding wins. Ask Coca-Cola.
Yep.
Ask Pepsi. When's the last time Coca-Cola came on TV and said, by the way, you can buy 6-pack of Cokes right now, discounted for $15?
Yeah.
They don't need to do that. There is no call to action in Coke. It's because they've built a dominant brand. Now, keep in mind, Coke is worldwide. How do you become the Coke of your local market? Well, it starts by generating revenue, because the moment that we can generate revenue, now we can allocate a portion of our budget to marketing. That's a part of the whole plan, right? We've got to spend dollars in marketing. So I would start, like, what are some reasons why businesses struggle to generate leads? Number one, they don't have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget. I won't call his name. It was a dear friend of mine. I was up in, and by the way, those that are checking out the show right now, if you're from there and I get this wrong, please do not get mad at me. But it's in Pennsylvania, but it's Butler, but it's not Butler. It's Buller. And so
roll it
they're
together,
from
right?
Butler, Pennsylvania is where they're from. And I'll never forget, it was a second generation. Him and his brother owned the business, and dad owned the business prior to that. And I said, Mike, sorry about that. Nobody knows his last name, so I guess we'll protect him anyways. I said, what's the marketing plan? He said, well, Chris, here's how my dad viewed it. He said, marketing's like cow shit. And they were pasture boys, farm boys. I said, okay, tell me more. He said, it's kind of like this. The more you throw at the wall, the more sticks. I said,
yeah,
Mike, that's not a good plan.
Right.
That sounds, especially considering that you're treating your money like poop and you're throwing it against the wall and hoping that it works. So when you think about no leads, no problem, like, start with where you're at today. Number one, where do you have a plan of marketing? Because number one is marketing. You got to have a plan. Hey, we're going to do this, this, and this, and understand that a part of your marketing, you're actually testing things.
Yes. Massively.
And Kenny, have you ever heard this? That won't work in my market.
Not only have I heard it, there was a time I used to say that quite a bit, my friend.
I mean, Kenny, Yellow Pages still work. I sold my business, but I know there's still advertising in the Yellow Pages, and I know that it works because of the market that I served in.
Yeah.
The Yellow Pages still work. So when people say Yellow Pages are dead, I'm like, if you would have gave me that business advice, you would have cut out one of my top 5 lead sources.
Yeah.
And I could show you reports of that, by the way, with a surety that's the number they called. I can't tell you that's how they first heard about us or any of that. So that brings me back to my next one. So number one is a plan. Number two, you've got to track the effectiveness of what you're already doing.
Mm-hmm.
What gets tracked gets measured. What gets measured has the ability to be improved. And so when we are tracking our marketing, we can truly start to see things, and that allows us to understand, okay, hey, this is not working. We do need to shift. And sometimes, and Kenny, let me ask, I mean, I know that you were in a market where Yellow Pages worked, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I think to that point, and last week last session, we talked about making sure that you're in your own race and you're playing your own game. And that's so important when you're thinking about leads. And when you talked about being operationally excellent first. Now, everything is in play and it's about progress, not perfection. But as you improve operationally, your marketing automatically improves because leads are maximized and so on and so forth. But last session when we talked about not running a race as a swimming athlete, like, you're in the pool and you're swimming. Well, as you're marketing, and it's this very near and dear to me, because to your point, I used to be so frustrated because I was in a geographically populated, locked market. 85% of our business always was within 80,000 people. And I bought businesses 60 miles away to go buy more population and different things like that. And it never changed that fact of where we were really good, we were really good. And in hindsight, I got to learn that my friends in Denver, I operated in Western Colorado, and I had mentors and friends in the Denver market at the time. And it was like, they weren't any bigger than I was, and they had this massive pool of 3 million people. But to Chris's point, they were spreading their marketing out and going, oh, well, I'm going to go. And I remember, like, when I bought a business 60 miles away, it was 60 miles away and it took us an hour to get there. Where in many of your metro areas, I'm in Phoenix now, it could be 10 miles away and it could take an hour to get there. And so for us, we're like, okay, you got to hop on and go to Montrose, whatever. And so I just want, like, for me, it was a blessing to me. I thought it was a curse, but I had to keep on pounding the same market with the same dollars and the same strategies. And that's why we dominated at the level that we did, because we had that repetition. And like you were talking about, it's reach and frequency. Our reach wasn't very big because our market wasn't very big. And that's why we were able to go so deep in that well. And yes, Yellow Pages worked because we had an older market and a slow to change market. And they still work in a lot of our clients' markets today. And to your point, direct mail still works. There's a lot of things, but I'll leave this, like, where I bring value to this podcast when Chris is talking tactically. I want to get you to think mentally for a moment and realizing that you can market to a weakness in your business because you're not operationally sound, meaning that, I remember one of the businesses I bought was I bought a 4-truck HVAC only company, or primarily HVAC. And we weren't good at HVAC yet in the business that I was operating. And I bought this company and it was like, oh my gosh, like, they had leads and we sucked at it. They did some new construction. We were awful at it, but they were busy and they had stuff going on. So for them, they were able to make it work. Then we got good at HVAC and I bought a little 2-truck company that appeared like they didn't have any leads. And these two partners just complained nonstop. We can't grow, Kenny. We can't grow, Kenny. I bought the business. One of them became a service manager. One of them became a comfort advisor. And we tripled the business in 12 months because I knew how to operationally win then. And they didn't know that. And they did it for us. Like, so just being mindful of how this all connects when you're looking at this. As Chris is talking strategy, remember, mentally, the same lead can go to 3 different companies and get 3 different results. That's not a mistake. That's not the same client, the same market, 3 different strategies, and 2 of those 3 companies will go, oh, that lead sucked. And one's going to go, I want more like that.
So I'm going to throw down just a couple of quick nuggets here tactically that you can go do. Number one is understand what your plan is, which is, here's what I'm paying for, here's what I'm getting, right? Here's what I'm paying for. Now what you got to do is validate that through tracking, and don't focus so much on lead cost. Okay, lead cost can get really high, but really what you really want to focus on is the ROI.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the leads are $200 a piece, but the average ticket are, your ROI. I mean, what if you're 100% on that? What if you're a $20,000 average ticket on those calls? And so this is why it's important to break every lead source down into its own tracking number. And there are platforms out there that can help you do that, softwares that'll help you do that. Now, what you've got to do is make sure, and this is important, do not put all of your eggs in one basket. Because when you live by the sword, you die by the sword. So when internet marketing stops working, I can tell you this of a client most recently: if Google ever puts you in jail for something on your GMB page, and that was your own, you're done. You're done. And so they struggled mightily for several months trying to work out the kinks with Google. And so while yes, that's a big portion, it was the only portion.
Right.
It was the lion's share of the business, and it hurt bad. And so now we're panicking and trying to find ways. So the next thing I want you to do is assess your current lead strategy. What have I tested? And what have I given the opportunity to find out that it doesn't work? Example, well, I've direct mailed once. Okay, well, what was the strategy around direct mail? When we start talking about direct mail and the strategy, we know that repetition on that one's super important. Messaging is important. When you look at the direct mail piece, did it look the same? Because if all of a sudden I tried direct mail 3 times and all 3 pieces, all 3 looked different, all had 3 different colors, 3 different offerings, you didn't truly give the same message time after time after time. And sometimes it takes, according to studies, 7 to 10 times for somebody to hear something before it sinks in. Human beings, like Kenny, you and I can talk about something and you may forget it. If we talk about it again, higher probability to remember.
Right.
But if we've talked about it 7 to 10 times, you're going to remember that conversation. The same is true with marketing. So assess your current lead strategy. What is the strategy? And you do that by tracking. An example that I give you there as well. You should segment out your customers, existing and new. What are we doing to market to our existing customers? So this goes back to a couple things I want you to assess. I'd like for you to go pull a revenue report that shows revenue by existing customers versus new customers. Find out, where's the lion's share of our revenue coming from? Are we good at generating revenue from new customers and existing? And there is no, Chris, where should we be? Every business is different. Okay. It depends on the maturity. It depends on how long it's been in business. There's so many factors there.
Yes.
From there, and this is the deal, revenue by zip code report. This will help you to understand, is some of our marketing targeting areas of which we're not going deep in because we're trying to spread too thin. Dial that money back, concentrate it in the market where you're in today. So whether it be going, now what I'm doing is I'm just freeing up budgeting dollars in areas where it's not being effective. Well, Chris, I wanted to expand into that market. Well, if you're having lead flow challenges, now might not be a time to expand.
Right.
You're expanding the footprint is not the solution to no leads.
Absolutely.
Now from there, got to ask myself the question, how diverse am I? When I look at my marketing budget, how much money we're spending. Chris, we're spending 2%. Chris, we're spending 10%. Chris, we're spending 12%. But how does that break down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Looking at that and going, am I diversified? Kenny, it's no different than when we think about wealth management. One of the things they talk about in Wealth Management 101 is make sure you diversify, right? Spend money on the things that are good, but diversify so that if one, plummets, you're not left holding everything. And so marketing's the same way. The next thing I want to talk about is building brand awareness. And there's people out there that have written books. There's businesses out there that exist to help people brand. Identifying a few things from brand awareness. Number one is making sure that all of my marketing looks and feels like my brand. If my trucks are neon green and black and I'm putting out marketing that's orange, that doesn't make sense. It's hard for the brain to connect those dots. And so don't miss the opportunity to create brand awareness with your company through vans, uniforms, signage, and then now go to website, my invoices, my business cards. Does everything looks like the brand? And I'd say now that things like existing customers, let me dip into that for a minute. There are companies out there that can generate leads for you off of your existing customer base, or you can do it as well. It just takes time, or it takes money, or both. And so, are we doing happy calls with our existing customers? Are we doing follow-ups with our unsold estimates? And if your process is that the frontline people do the follow-ups on the estimates, I've never found success with that. I've rarely have I found businesses that have success with that. They have a separate inside sales team that does that.
Yes.
Through the follow-up. So when you think about walking away today, no leads, no problem. There are lead aggregators out there. And I know that there's a lot of, it didn't work for me. And that's fine. I'm just going to throw it out there. Home Advisor was one of my top 5 lead sources. And I hear contractors all the time, oh, those are crap leads. Oh, they're waste of money. Oh, they're this, they're that. But it was a part of our strategy, Kenny. We would go into a market, and that was what we turned on first.
But you didn't handle them the same as you did all leads aren't the same. And I think that's the thing, is you had to have a specific strategy in order. And that's why so many people go, oh, it doesn't work. And it might be harder work, but to your point, it's knowing how to handle that. It's like, to me, it's like speaking languages. That lead is a different language than an absolute demand. Get out here now. I'm ready to replace. Right. And so that's a shopping language, and you better know how to handle that shopping language. And I think that's powerful.
Couple of quick nuggets on lead aggregators, if possible, and I'll just give some of my strategies. And by the way, those that are wondering, Home Advisor is no longer Home Advisor; they're Angie, which is they've changed a lot as well. And so,
Sure.
Don't hang any past experiences on current businesses. Meaning, if you had a bad experience with Angie in the past, like they've changed their product and things have changed, would you be willing to test it again? And I'd say today, if I open service business tomorrow, Angie Leads is going to be a part of what I'm going to do.
And you're going to test it. You're going to test it. 100%. That's the key, is test it.
And here's a couple of nuggets for those on lead aggregators, and a lot of big ones out there. Number one is, don't buy the expensive leads. In other words, don't buy all your replacement leads. They're high priced to buy out of the gate. And if your company's not a great selling company, those are going to be very challenging leads to not only book, but sell. And so now you're going to have people that are a little bit more price sensitive because they're in the market, they're shopping. And so they're like, hey, yeah, sure, that sounds good to me. So number one, don't buy the expensive leads. Number two, before signing up, pull a revenue by zip code report. Find out where I already have brand awareness and go there. Use those zip codes. Use those zip codes for the lead aggregation. And the next thing that I'm going to tell you is, make sure that at night when you leave, somebody turns the lead flow off, and first thing in the morning, somebody turns it back on. Because overnight, those leads are coming in and you're getting charged from them and you're not working them.
Right.
And then lastly, whatever their process, their CRM or whatever, work the leads in their CRM and make sure that you've got a dedicated person that owns those leads. Because if more than one person owns it, nobody owns it.
Nobody owns it. Right.
So Ishmael in my business owned, at the time, Home Advisor leads. And Ishmael was fantastic at those leads. He was great at it. And this goes back to the next point. Inbound calls and Angie's leads are not the exact same. You might actually have the wrong team member working those leads as well. So assess that as well.
Absolutely.
So when we think about, easy ways, lead aggregators, follow-ups, companies that are out there that are going to generate great results for you. And we're not here to promote any one particular company, but there's a lot of great companies out there that do lead aggregation. And if you understand the process and how to work them, they're going to work magic for you. Same is true around your existing. We talked a little bit about understanding your market from your brand, revenue by zip code, revenue by existing customer. If you're struggling for leads right now, and there's no struggle at all of like, you've got a database, I'd like for you to then go to the database and say, how many quotes or estimates have we not sold? What's the process? And by the way, you only get one shot at this. So don't just put an untrained person on the phone calling, trying to do follow-ups.
Right.
That's the worst thing you could ever do. Make sure there's a sales process in place. When someone answers the phone, what does it sound like? Here's your little nugget on when it comes to outbound calling. I've always found that when you're outbound calling, it's best before you ask to speak to someone to identify yourself and the purpose for your call before asking to speak one. It might sound a little something like this. The phone rings, Kenny answers, says hello, and I say, hey, this is Chris calling over from the Blue Collar Success Group. I'm calling in regards to the appointment that was made at your home last month, somewhere around about the 10th. May I speak to Kenny, please?
Yeah.
There's your little nugget on the outbound call,
There
okay?
you go.
Making sure you're announcing that. And then this is your low cost generation leads, referrals. Every call that we ran, Kenny, we left 3 referral cards behind. Every call, 3 referral cards. Door hangers. People say those things don't work. Do you know why they don't work? Because we only use them when we don't have calls.
That's right. Exactly.
Everybody's trying to put Band-Aids on stuff that needs stitches.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when you're looking at low cost generation stuff, budgeted minded, very focused on tactical strategies you can go do today. We talked a little bit about those. I would encourage you to start with something small. Don't go to try to do all of this, and then measure the results.
Yes.
From there, what went right? What did we learn?
That's the key with, I've always kind of joked. I've been more heavy in the sales side than marketing side my entire career. And I always complained about that with marketing, that if marketing doesn't work, we call it testing. If sales doesn't work, we call it failure. And I'm like, wait a minute, because you're testing all the time in marketing. And that's the key. And I would remind you, ladies and gentlemen, from my mindset focus, remember that when Chris was talking about congruency, sometimes it feels boring, and boring is brilliant when it comes to your brand. When your brand, because we get, oh, I want to change it up. I want to do something. Why? Because our brain is seeking dopamine. So be cautious about like, oh, I like how that looks. I always had a mantra. I don't care how it looks. Some of the ugliest pieces that would never, ever get a response from me, or, you're not your target demographic. It doesn't matter what it looks like. I'm attached to results, not the dopamine of that. So be mindful, boring is brilliant. And remember that. And that's what it's all about. And again, we're going to come back to you next session, and we're going to keep on talking about marketing. So, we're going to get into some more strategies and some deeper magic around some of this, but we just really wanted to open your mind today, get you thinking around that. And some of this, you might be like, okay, I'm doing that. We're looking for one nugget an episode for you to go, I need to revisit that. I have heard that. And if you're one of Blue Collar's members, remember, go use your tools. And if you're new to us, just like, hey, wait a minute, I could dive into that. There's little things, and nothing happens without that action. Go take that action. Thank you for being with us. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all those things. And we will see you on the next episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Kenny.